And now, a special high witness report from the field. Uncle Weed, this is the Home Office. Are you there? Are you there? Do you read me? Calling Uncle Weed.
Hello, the Cannaverse. The incense is lit. I've turned off the record and I got a warm cup of Tulsi. That's holy basil for you enthusiasts. For those keeping score, in a ceramic mug here in the not quite so secret historic grain barn studio here in provincial Japan. Today's topic: Cannabis Creative. Could we call it Cannabis Creative Corner? Something like that. Anyway, Uncle Weed's Cannabis Creative for Cannaverse Club. Now, the reason this is interesting to me is when I use the herb, a lot of folks, you can use it for whatever you want, right? But for me, I get creative and I feel like making things, and I love making things. I always have ever since I was a little kid. So today I'm going to talk about 3 different ways of personal expression and arts and crafts fun. Today's forums we're going to talk about is storyboards. I also call these static montage, because storyboard often it refers to kind of like when you're making a film and you sketch out scene by scene in little squares and you draw the action or whatever, so the director can remember what to shoot and how to log the scenes and everything. But in this case, what I mean by storyboards is when I went to the island nation of Palau in Micronesia, they have these ornate carved relief panels that kind of tell an entire story in one panel. So it's kind of like, as my friend the Unibonger said, a static montage. In my case, I'm taking all kinds of travel ephemera and collaging it on a board. And we're going to see some examples on that. Next is scrapbooks. Behind me, I have shelves full of scrapbooks. And sometimes scrapbooks, it's like, scrap is a lousy term because it means like throw away things. But when you go traveling, do you keep like ticket stubs and postcards and little notes and odds and ends, and now you even get like little Wi-Fi codes or little notes slipped to you, or boarding passes, all this kind of stuff. When I've done a lot of traveling and I don't really buy things because I'm usually traveling light, but I keep all these paper things and later collage it all into scrapbooks, add some narrative, and these things have become some of the great treasures of my life. The next is some postal goods, postcards, aerograms, and I'm going to just do a little bit of that today because any of these could be an hour on their own. But let's get started, and then you can let me know which things you find interesting, and we can proceed further if you want. And so I'm going to share a couple of my favorite supplies and techniques and some examples to start the conversation, because participation is rewarded by actual postcards, aerograms, who knows, in the mail, delivered by a postal worker, possibly wearing a little hat, maybe a parka. Here in Japan, they drive these great red scooters and come zipping around. On Sundays even, they deliver post on Sundays. What kind of magical world am I living in? So the reasons for caring about this stuff, like you need it, but since I got the blackboard, for me doing these things is a really meditative activity. I get going with the scissors and the pens and the glue, and hours slip by because I can remember these places I've gone. Every little slip of this paper, for the most part, carries some kind of nuance and memory for me, and I'm compiling these things in a real state of flow, which is a whole other topic in itself. Inspiration for other people. You come back from some trip and say, man, how was your trip to wherever? I've made these for Grateful Dead tour, and I've made them to go into Nepal and all points in between. Instead of flipping through your little robot phone and saying, oh yeah, there's this great picture here. Oh yeah, there's this great picture. Oh yeah, we stayed at this place, and oh yeah, I can't. Yeah, I'll show you some of these times. Here's a link to some website that you're gonna never go look at. In this case, and also goes with the storyboards, you can tell this whole story, and they can sit there with these things and tactilely enjoy your experience. I think anyway. So it inspires other people. Well, what can I say? I'm an older dude now, and I love sharing with the younger folks. That's maybe you. I don't know. that anything and anywhere and everywhere and all of it is all possible. And I really mean that sincerely. You spin the globe, there's one right there. You spin the globe and pick a place, and and instead of planning about, oh, I really want to go to this country, I always think about what parameters does this journey have, and sort of let the universe tell me where to go. But again, a whole other topic. And for your own memories, I kind of lost a portion of my brain along the way due to reasons I'm not going to get into now, but there were some injuries and concussions, and I could reconstruct parts of my life that were quite literally forgotten because I had these scrapbooks and notebooks. And all of a sudden, the touch of these things, that book of matches, that train ticket, that little memo from someone, brings everything flooding right back. And there's one important word which will come up through here, ephemera. This is one of my favorite words. This is a class of collectibles or items that may or may not be important. Things that were designed to be disposable, perhaps, or single use, i.e. tickets, telegrams, stamps, but become part of a narrative if used correctly. So, those are our topics. Next, I'm going to gingerly move this, and we're going to jump into storyboards. View of this, for those who have been following along in the introduction video I did. And this is from a 2002 trip with the Unibonger to the Netherlands. One of the focus of the trip was showing my film Hempen Road at the High Times Cannabis Cup. There's my judges' passes. So a couple things to show here. I mix in this a lot of 3D items in here. Here's a little cigarette, a little joint box from the Bulldog, and I put in here some other things that just don't quite fit into the routine, but just little extra ephemera. You can see there's an actual bag in here, and then there's little pieces of narrative. It's a little hard to see right here, but these are written on rolling papers and with an inky pen, and I wrote little memos. So kind of, as you look around, it kind of drives the narrative of the whole experience along. Now, this isn't necessary, and there's no rules to any of this, but I think having the words in here, then someone on their own can look at this and they can get the gist of the whole trip. You can see that there was Amsterdam, but there was also Deventer, because there's a train ticket here going to the town of Deventer. There is the Van Gogh Museum. There's the Rijksmuseum. Here is a classic canal scene. And maps are a great thing for this. And then look at this, the rolling papers, actually like, oh, look at that. So you could technically use these rolling papers, but let's not. This one's, it's moved around a lot, so it's a little damaged as it is. And there's something missing that was obviously here. But train tickets, there's a great photo of some joints in a vending machine. A quote from Anne Frank at the Anne Frank house. Heavy. But it's a great quote. I want to be useful. I want to be useful or bring enjoyment to all people. And therefore, I am so grateful to God for giving me this gift of writing, of expressing all that is in me. The story ends badly. Now, I should also point out that one was built on a piece of kind of light density fiberboard that had some piece of art someone gave me that just wasn't really for me. And I should talk more about the various substrates for making these, because it does make a big difference, because the one problem I've had with these is how to display them and how to protect them. This one is done on a big piece of mat board, and then I put a piece of foam core behind it to make it a little stronger. This is from across Canada, well, most of the way across Canada, Vancouver to Toronto, which is approximately 2/3 of the way across Canada, by train with 11 rock and roll bands, a CBC documentary crew, radio crew, a documentary crew. And this is fun because it has CDs that some of these fold out, but they've been squished in this. It's been in a box for quite some years. But I had all the different bands sign the CDs. So the CDs, in some cases, are actually in here. Pictures from the train. And other artifacts. Here's a beer opener there was a beer sponsor for the trip. I, of course, had my own beer sponsor, but that's another story. The same on-the-road bottle that you've seen in other videos. Here's a cloth patch. Here's a whole scene of all of us with the mayor of Melville. Here's us marauding the town of Hornpayne, Ontario. Magnets, claim checks from a hotel. Here's my own beer sponsor, another beer opener. So again, you get these common themes of the same kind of stuff. And then this was run by, there was a green couch that all the bands played on, so of course that's in there. And then a little hint about how I then made podcasts about all, I know you're shocked, right? Of all along the trip. And so here's a little podcast art. You can see a CD quite literally falling out there. This is a great piece too. This is a CD from Maurice, who just has a new CD out called Big Country. And there's a line going from Vancouver to Toronto and with a map of Canada on there. So maps are a great thing to kind of give some context to the pieces. All right, another sip of tea while you while you gaze at that and think about, wow, I'd really like to listen to those podcasts and learn more about this trip. And by the way, you probably know about the 1970 film, a journey that was taken in 1970 called Festival Express. The band, the Grateful Dead, Janis Joplin, Buddy Guy, Sha Na Na, Ian and Sylvia, Flying Burrito Brothers. Anyway, they went from Montreal, headed west across Canada. We went west to east on this trip to do concerts in various towns, and they all went horribly wrong. The footage from this film was stashed in a garage and moved around for literally decades. Came out maybe 10, 12 years ago now, and because it was shot on 35 millimeter and sitting in garages preserved, it's beautiful. And they went through Saskatoon, Saskatchewan a week, 10 days before I was born in that same town. And I learned that Jerry Garcia and Robert Hunter put the words to music for Ripple while they were there in Saskatoon, and then debuted it in San Francisco the day after my birthday. A little Grateful Dead trivia. Like I'm tying it in like I had something to do with it. And of course I did. Okay, yikes. The third example, this one, I'm going to show you the back of this, because this is put on a piece of 3/4 inch plywood. That was a big silkscreen frame, and then a piece of kind of panel board in front of it. So it's really heavy, and again, really difficult to display, which is the one thing I haven't really figured out. But now that I have walls, because in the past I haven't had walls, which is a big problem. But I needed this heaviness because this is really has some, it just requires it. Here's a little pocket knife on here. This is a trip to Belize, Key Cocker, Belize. And there's a narrative. The piss test was a sham, of course. Of course I was token at the golf tournament, but they wanted me out of their dot bomb, and I lawyered up to fight it. I split Olympia arriving in Belize with a broken arm from playing hockey, no knowledge, and happened upon a wee island of Key Cocker, humming Zevon send lawyers, guns, and money. Key Cocker was still tidying, rebuilding, and cheering up after Hurricane Keith destroyed many homes with 125-mile-an-hour wind. Here's me on the motor vessel Rice and Beans for shark catching in Conch Ceviche and new pals. Patience and time. This is a note because I read War and Peace while I was there. Yes, I'm on a tiny tropical island with only golf carts. Broken arm. Within the first couple hours, I met all the 2-bit Rastas and changed money. So I got some money here. This is actually, I made copies of the money. Funny thing is, I learned from working at Kinko's. That's a copy center in the olden days. They check, the color copiers can check if you're copying money. Anyway, this is some Belize money, some postcards. I sent a postcard to Ruben, the guy from the over here who ran the little Ignacio's beach cabins where I stayed. He sent one back. Here's my transit permit. They're all distressed because I just took one disposable 35 mm, one disposable film camera, and so each picture was rather precious. I reggae bar, Anyway, one of my own watercolors here. And a lot of these things, you can kind of see that I floated it. And what I mean by that is I use this kind of rather thick double-sided tape. There we go. Some rather thick double-sided tape. And double-sided tape is a really key tool to all these things that I'm using. And now I used to use this kind of carpet double-sided tape you could get at the home improvement stores or whatever in North America. But then through strange coincidence at an auto body shop in Japan, I found that there's all kinds of high-grade double-sided tape. And later I found this at Japanese dollar stores. The other really key ingredient for this stuff is called Mod Podge. And my mom taught me about this. My dear mother taught me about this years ago. And this is kind of a clear matte finish glue. Get the matte finish one rather than the glossy one. And this, all these pictures and all this stuff is coated with this Mod Podge, which makes it really strong and resistant to all like the touching and fiddling around that I'm doing with it. Oh, look at that. There's even a seashell and lighters. Lighters are another thing that end up on a lot of these things. Bellican beer, a label from a rum bottle. Well, you get the idea. Okay, I have a couple more of these, specifically one from Palau, but there's no way I'm getting it there because it's back in this corner. I got stuff in the way, but you may have seen it already. And this one was the best substrate I used because it's on a wooden panel cradle. So it's kind of a thick, and so it hangs up a lot easier than these other ones. I've thought about with these, do I put them, build a frame around them and put them under glass? Then it just becomes more heavy and cumbersome. How do I display it? If you got any ideas, if you're handy like that, please do let me know. Okay, I'll leave that up for a minute here while we move on to scrapbooks. I made some notes here in some tree-free paper that's been waiting probably 25 years for this opportunity to be put to use. This is 70% hemp, 30% cotton. No trees are used in this product. Paper made in Slovenia, printing and binding in the US of A. Hemp paper saves trees. Indeed it does. And I gotta say, hemp paper, the use of hemp for paper was one of the big reasons I became an activist to begin with. All right, a little bit of tea here. Now, I mentioned these things are these storyboards get a little bit big and cumbersome. And also you can't make them while you're traveling, or, you know, for the most part you can't. So I also, I began making, well, I've always made, but I make a lot of scrapbooks. And again, scrap is kind of a lousy term because it sort of assumes a sort of throwawayedness. But I'm going to kind of show you what I mean. And the thing I love about doing this is I can make these in real time. I deal with a significant chronic and complex illness, and I do a lot of traveling, but this traveling means I spend a lot of time in coffee shops, and I have a lot of intentional or otherwise downtime. And so I love to find a great little coffee shop or something and sit in the corner and put these books together. I always have a little kit when I'm traveling that has my favorite glue sticks. Now, you probably, those of you in North America, the Uhu brand glue sticks, and they're all gummy and white, and they get and they're all like using paste in elementary school. These ones, it looks a little rough there, but you smooth this stuff on and it dries clear and it works great. So again, if you're in your town, if there's a Japanese 100 yen store or craft store, or online, maybe you can find, there you go, glue sticks. So I always have a little kit with some glue sticks and then a variety of pens. I'll probably usually have about 4 or 5 pens and pencils in a little kit. And then I'll have a few different kinds of, again, the double-sided tape, but also the some paper tape. Sometimes this is called washi tape. Washi is just a word for paper in Japanese. But the thing that's nice about this is it's just light, It's a little bit translucent, so when you put stuff on, and you can find some cute designs of it. Geez, cute, hey? That can add to your little narrative if you use it in the right way. So I usually at the beginning will start a little page. It kind of tells when this happened and something in case I lose it. But you can see here that it's a mix of a diary. There's boarding passes. There's little things I pick up along the way. This is a trip going from, this one's going to take us all the way from Vegas to Utah. Everything like little newspaper clippings here, Stanley Cup odds from little bits of poetry, notes about where to go, some pictures. This reminds me of a crazy night at an old castle in Germany where we ended up with a guy with a broken leg and a Citroen 2 Chevaux with like 6 ladies. And some maps thinking about where I might go next. And sure enough, I ended up in Thailand, making lists of different songs that I'm listening to, different books that I'm reading, some little haiku, and some other things I've been, rabbit holes I've been going down. My schedule for the hospitals I was doing in Pitsanulok, and then how much I was spending on all this. And it goes on and on like this, and some letters. And then again, there's a little envelope here for the things that don't quite fit into this book. And then on to, oh, this is a great note. Dear Dave, sorry today there's no sandwich from this place, so I bought another for you to try. What a sweet note. Stamps, and then here I am in India, a receipt from a museum, different medical tests, keeping track, a tarot reading, snippets of poetry. The king of Thailand died. There's stamps and newspaper clippings, and oh, there's always a problem about taking scissors, because a great pair of scissors is really a great thing. But I've lost so many pairs of scissors on these trips. So now, because when I travel, usually it's just a carry-on bag. So Swiss like army knives and pocket knives and scissors are always seized, and I've lost so many good pairs. So now I just when I land somewhere, one of my first jobs is getting a pair of just crappy dollar store scissors. Sometimes receipts and tickets fade, but you can get the other idea. Now, this scrapbook is a good indication of the kinds of, oh, here's some more stamps. Oh, those are nice. What kind of goes into the scrapbooks. But this is just a cheap, I bought this at the dollar store. I think maybe my brother had sent me some of these, and now I get them all the time at the dollar store here. Along with this style here, again, dollar store. This one has the coil bound, and this one is a good example of sort of getting ready for one. This is a trip going back east Canada, then traveling with the matinee rock and roll band. And so I've started to sort of rough out, getting all the things together and sort of putting them in there where they might go, how they might fit in. And maybe we'll start to put that together. But next I want to show you making your own scrapbooks. Now, this takes a little bit of preparation, but it's so very worth it. Oh, this brings back memories. So the very back page, the backer board, this one is not a great example of it because this is just a piece of kind of cardstock. But the very best thing to use is get your old board games. So go to the second-hand store and buy old board games and get and cut up the boards. Calendar paper works great for the front. Geez, I should pull some more of these out, but I'll share some more examples in some links or something. But the important thing is this binding. So you make a block. So the binder, the backer board at the bottom, piece of like board game, calendar paper on top, and then you fill this inside with all kinds of different paper. Now, you'll see that I have different colors and different weights in here. And the important thing is to have the paper, not just your regular copy paper, but something a little bit thicker. I love going to stationery stores and finding like the weird stuff on the bottom closeout, like the dusty old stationery stores, not like the big box stores, but like the neighborhood ones, and they'll have like cast-offs or odds and ends. And you gather up these papers that are a little thick, a little weird, or find paper that's from some disused book or calendar. And then get some cheapy clamps like this. You clamp the whole thing together. Get your block. You clamp it. And then I get a drill. And again, just whatever battery-powered little crafty drill. Doesn't have to be a big construction dude drill. Zut, zut, zuts. Get a big embroidery needle, again a 99-cent item, and some hemp twine. And you just do some notches here, sew that together. Get a piece of paper, put your Mod Podge or your double-sided tape or your glue on that, and smooth that over so you can see the stitches in there. The cover here I took some old aerograms and I made photocopies of them. I printed out some Insta photos, put the little photo corners here. There's all kinds of different styles of those photo corners. Oh, here's a little preview of New Year's card going out this year. Don't tell anyone, but our New Year's card will kind of look like this. Maybe if I get a minute here, I'll show you previous year's New Year's card. Anyway, there's the little corners, and these are kind of like old-timey, what you might have seen in your granny's photo albums. But they're great for inserting things in a kind of semi-non-permanent way. You can get them clear, black, gold, whatever. And then once you have this made, you can start coming up with a theme for it if you want. Here's like different passport pictures, trying out some stamps. And then you can, this is measuring distances to cities for a signpost project I'm working on. And you'll notice some interesting edges on some of these pictures. I got a pair of cheap crafty scissors here that give a little serrated edge. And I also have my dear mother's old pinking shears. These things are super heavy duty and a bit of a workout to use, but it gives you that jagged edge. So it gives some nice interestingness to the pictures. So I found a great board game that was called something about hitchhiking. And so you can see that this has some real weight to it. And then I found this book, the Western Tour book, Canada Welcomes You, from Mackenzie King, the Prime Minister at the time. I'm looking for a date on this, 1941. So this is, if you're middle, it's World War II, but you want to take a little vacation, go on there to Canada. So this was making a book project that maybe I'll actually finish one of these years, maybe not, called Fuck Stats Make Art, based on a talk that I did at South by Southwest and some other conferences. But this is basically, this book is all my knowledge about everything about making arts and crafts and why this is important and all the meta story. And you know what? If I never make this book exists because it's right here. Here's some of the same pictures that we saw on the collages. There it is. I started traveling a little bit further afield and would always put a notebook in there. And I went to Europe with a one-way ticket and $100 Canadian tucked into my shoe and a backpack. All of you have done some kind of trip or some kind of adventure that's taken you out of your comfort zone, and that's the kind of stuff you should write about. I got photos of hitchhiking signs, and I still got old hitchhiking signs there. But this is, and then at the end, it has the map that came in that same Western travel book with all the distances from Chicago to Vancouver, how to get there. Gosh. And this also reminds me, because, this is just around the time that My boys Kerouac and Cassidy were rambling around, and I think so. It's for me, it kind of connects generations. When I was 16 years old, I bought a Volkswagen van. Then I started taking a big trip around the U.S., Canada, Mexico. Then I ended up in Germany as a grape picker, Japan as a mushroom. Later on, Guam as a fire juggler. So here's the whole transcriptions of some of these talks I did. So in this case, it's not ephemera at all. This is the most important things that I've developed of my life. And it all goes in here into the scrapbook. This one's a little worse for wear and needs a little bit of a tune-up, because this one was made with those crappy glue sticks I was telling you about. But I was on the island of Nusa Chenegan when I put that together. So you work with the materials that you have available, of course.
Attention all cannabis enthusiasts around the world.
Next is Postal Goods. Now, I get a little excited about this because I spend a lot of time doing this, and the thing about making postcards or sending something in the mail is that there's a beginning and middle and an end to the story without that you get to be a part of. When you put something on social webs, and goodness knows I love doing that, people react to it and they see it for a minute and then it carries on and then it's lost or forgotten in the ether sometimes. But a postcard, postcards and letters, they really stick around. Like I have letters here. In fact, basically every letter anyone's ever sent me in my entire life lives in a box back there. But then I even end up sometimes with letters that weren't sent to me, but the stamps and the envelopes are just so enjoyable. Expo 70 in Japan, right around when I was being born, from the Canadian Pavilion with Ontario, British Columbia, Quebec, here in Japan, connecting my cultures. These great old stamps and the great typewriting. And sometimes I come across a little shop that has, here's Germany and Newfoundland and I'm not a stamp collector. Like, I don't know the value of any of these, but I love the stories that come with these kinds of things. Letters are quite literally the record of our existence. And just other postal ephemera. This is the M-Bag. This is U.S. Postal Service's secret best thing, where you can send big boxes of books and other media. By sea, it could go in like a Santa sack up to 60 pounds. And you can ship that stuff overseas, cannot have a letter or anything like that in it. Anyway, the point is, I love sending letters and postcards. And for me, it gives me an opportunity to combine my paintings with a message to a friend or a stranger and put the stamp on it, and then get to play with all my inky stamps to put things on it like important and expedite and urgent and private and confidential, which I think is hilarious on postcards, a confidential postcard. Find stamps with made from train tickets. Or there's a scary skull. My little flourish that goes on to so many of these things. And what constitutes a postcard? Well, it doesn't even have to say postcard on it, but I made a little stamp that says postcard. Again, dollar store, hyakuyen store stamps, put it together with a couple of little sticks and a rubber band, and voila, I got a postcard stamp. I didn't even put on some sumo. Anyway, in this case, I made a series of postcards that are private and confidential that then folks can order, but it's postcards of post boxes. So there's one from Oman, from Nepal, from Olympia, Greece, and from the Vatican. So it's very meta, and that amuses me. That is postcards of post boxes. I also have series that I made from India, and India is such an incredibly colorful place, and I took a Lomo sardine can camera and took with expired film and took black and white photos of all these colorful scenes in India. And months later, the film came back developed, and it was these moody, mysterious pictures that I just adore. So I put a paper wrapper on them, confidential, a little bit of tape, and voila. people, I send these to folks, but also folks could buy the set. Here's a set for Barcelona or whatever. So making your own postcards. What does this take? Well, it takes an image. This can be a photo. It can be a drawing. Each one can be a unique handmade thing, or it can be your own art or whatever. Paper I use that I really like for doing this. This is some buy it here in Japan. And in Japan, the postcards go vertical, like you write here and then the address and then your message here. So everything's opposite land. But I print them generally more like a Western style with a little blurb down here and the stamp there or whatever. Where the stamp goes there and the message goes there. The great thing about this is kind of thick paper, but you can still get it through a printer. And it has this great tactility on it where it makes everything look like a little bit of a watercolor. And I always have stamps handy because I go down to the post office and I buy a big batch of them. But I also get these stamps when I go to foreign countries, like, you get a few hundred stamps from Sri Lanka. And depending on the theme of the letter, I will decorate up with some other stamps. And it's all right. You can put weird stamps on your letters. Like, these aren't organized at all, but I go through and I try to find just the right stamp to add a little bbit of decoration. So for example, when I send a postcard that's the Nepal post box, I can put a Nepal stamp on it, and makes it look all like mysterious and like, oh my goodness, where does this really come from? And I like to think that the postal workers here in Japan are somewhat amused by it. I know when I go to the post office to drop them off personally, the staff gets quite a kick out of the fact that I'm going there with a big stack of letters, going to different countries with all my quirky designs. So I have a whole kit in here that these postcards for sale go into. And then always stamps here, and sometimes I get these custom made, like where I have, my name and website or whatever. And sometimes they're cheapies and they have a whole bunch of different things, so I can put, approved or canceled or whatever. But again, the bottom shelf closeout department of the dusty old stationery store. Recently, I printed out some Panorama Photos from the Suez Canal and put those in some longer envelopes, and or I could have just thrown these just in as postcards. Postcards can really be all sorts of different sizes and dimensions, but in this case, I put them in an envelope so it'd preserve it a little bit better. But again, this is just a photo I took, printed out, do the no border and bleed it off to the edge, and it makes something that could decorate other people's scrapbooks, storyboards, or prestigious refrigerators around the world. All right, last thing is another underknown form of postal correspondence is the noble aerogram. This one's a little battered here. The aerogram, its medium and message all in the same. You're only allowed to write on the thing that comes with the postage prepaid. But address here, it goes here. You get this space for writing. You fold the thing up. These edges are glued. You glue it up, you throw it in the box, and you're good to go. Here's one from Nepal. This is just too fantastic with the stupas and the pictures on it. Again, you write it here, you fold it, and you throw it in. I got a whole assortment of those. And also, I collect hotel letterheads. Kind of adds an air of whimsy and excitement to your correspondence if that's your thing. So, to recap, there are no rules, but the end result is dopamine for you and for the people who get to look at your storyboards, scrapbooks, and other dispatches that they get in the mail. For me, especially during this last year and a half or whatever, I really go to hospitals, my buddy's goat farm, and the local post office. For me, it's a 7-minute walk, and I get quite a kick out of doing it. I know sometimes people think, oh, the post office is a drag, but when you send something to someone in the mail and they get it and it's not a bill or some advertisement for a real estate agent, they're really quite happy. And then it comes full circle where they'll send you a photo of, look, your postcard, your thing, your letter is on our fridge. And I don't know, for me, it's a real treat. And it's a great way to spend your time when you got a nice little head full. You know, here I'm burning some incense and drinking my tea and was listening to music, and putting together these things is a lot of fun. So, how may I help you? How may I help you? What are you curious about? What of these sorts of things inspires you, piques your interest? You'll notice that there's lots of tea tins and cigar boxes that are utilized in these processes. Let me know what you're thinking about. And if you do, interesting comment, interesting conversation, I would be very happy to send you a postcard to be proudly displayed on your fridge. If you're making storyboards, scrapbooks, whatever, let me know. I would love to see them. Meditation, inspiration, memories, dopamine, storyboards, scrapbooks, postal goods, ephemera from Uncle Weed for Cannaverse Club. You are now a member of the Cannabis Creative class, corner, consortium. That's it. Very fondly, your favorite uncle.
People, yummy, those that do, and those that talk. But when you get restless, you should expect less, and you'll find happiness if you put on your shoes and just walk.